What's up guys, it's the Comeback King here, and in today's video I want to do something a little different, take a break from Hut for the day, and see what happens if we put the 2014 pre-rebuild Toronto Maple Leafs up against the post-rebuild 2019 Stanley Cup contending Toronto Maple Leafs. So what I went ahead and did here was replicate the Leafs uniforms from 2014. I'd say they look pretty close, other than the shoulder patches having to be the Leafs' current logo because they don't have the shoulder patch in the game that they wore back then, and the jerseys CCM because they don't have Reebok ones anymore. No big deal, it looks pretty much the same, and I know they're already in the game with the Leafs team, but I have to use that Leafs team, of course, to go against them, so I decided to replicate them because that was a lot easier. So here's the lineup from opening night in the 2014-15 season against the Montreal Canadiens. Probably the first thing that'll jump out at you guys is the fact David Clarkson is an 82 overall. The only reason for that is I looked at his stats the previous season, and based off them I gave him an overall similar to players that have similar stats now. And other than that, I just had to curate some players like Lupul, like Fratton, and let's just go over the lines. Starting us off, I have the JVR Bozak Kessel line. I kept all their overalls the same because the numbers they put up haven't changed too much in the last 5 years, and it was just a lot easier that way. Moving on, we have the Lupul Kadri Clarkson line. I gave Lupul an 81 overall because that was probably what he deserved. He slowed down his pace and skill after all of his injuries and stuff like that, so I felt like an 81 was fair. Nazem Kadri kept him as an 84 as well because even though he had those couple 30-goal seasons, he had that down year last year, so I felt like it was a fair overall considering how he was 5 years ago. And then David Clarkson I upped to an 82 overall. I just looked at his previous numbers and based it off other players that put up similar numbers now. Next we have the Fratton, Holland, Komarov line. Matt Fratton, another player I had to make. He was always an okay player, but he would never put up too many points, so I felt like 78 overall was fair for him. He was an NHLer, but he definitely wasn't a top 6 guy. He was a 3rd or 4th liner at best. Peter Holland was with the Leafs up to, I think, just a couple years ago, but once again, another 3rd or 4th line centerman I had to make because I think he's in the KHL now, but I felt like a 79 overall was fair for the numbers he did put up while he was over here. Next we have Leo Komarov. I didn't change his overall, but I did change him back to being a right winger because he plays center now with the New York Islanders, and right wing is where he was always at with the Maple Leafs. Moving on down to the 4th line, starting with Daniel Winnick. He was already a 75 overall in the game. I kept him at that because I felt like that was fair. Mike Santorelli, he was an okay 4th line centerman, but I think he's over in the KHL now, if I'm correct. And based on the numbers he puts up compared to players that have come over to the NHL from the KHL, I felt like a 77 overall was pretty fair, especially for how he did that season. And then same for Brandon Kozun, another player that's now in the KHL as far as you know, that puts up similar numbers to Mike Santorelli. Now moving on to the atrocious Leafs defense from 2014-15, starting with the captain at the time, Dion Phaneuf. 79 overall is what they gave him in the game. I kept him at that. He got traded to Ottawa that year. He just wasn't that good, and I felt like that was fair. Now Stefan Robida, who is joked about a lot when the Leafs talk about LTIR, calling it Robida Island because he just disappeared. I'm pretty sure he works in player ops now. But overall, he wasn't bad for his age by any means, but he wasn't a first-line defenseman. Now we have Morgan Rielly. I had to keep him at an 88 overall. I could have made him stat for stat custom and then lowered them some, but I had to keep him at an 88 overall doing it this way, so that way he'd still be an 88 on the 2019 Leafs, which wasn't a huge deal when you look at how bad this team was anyway. Moving over to Roman Polak, a player similar to Dion Phaneuf, the game had him at a 75 overall, so I'm just going to keep him at that. He wasn't the fastest guy ever by any means, 6'2", 235 pounds. He's the guy that runs around the ice and hits everybody. He was okay, but never the greatest, so I just decided to leave him at a 75. Moving to Jake Gardiner. Jake Gardiner was decent that year. He definitely wasn't as good as he was 2 years ago when he put up 50 points. But I kept him at an 83 because I felt like that was fair, and he was definitely better than players like Phaneuf and Robida. And then Stuart Percy, I don't even know where he's at now. He dropped off. He was a first-round pick that did not work out for the Leafs at all. So I kept him at a 73 overall because he never made a noise in the NHL. Here we have the infamous goaltending tandem from the 2014-15 season and seasons prior, James Reimer and Jonathan Bernier. James Reimer is probably my favorite Leafs goalie of all time. I loved Reimer when he was in Toronto. He wasn't as good after the concussion, but he was decent overall. I upped him to an 83 overall. I felt like that was fair based on the stats he put up. Same for Jonathan Bernier. He put up very similar stats in those years. That's why the Leafs would flip-flop between the two. So another player I gave an 83 overall to. Overall, it's pretty crazy to see how much the Leafs have changed in the last 5 years. Even though it was a rebuild, it's pretty insane that the only player under contract with them still is Morgan Rielly, where they just traded Nazem Kadri earlier in the summer for Kerfoot and Barrie, and I'm really interested to see how this team ends up doing against the current Maple Leafs lineup. So just to show you guys real quick, I built the Leafs opening lineup based on the preseason game last night versus Montreal, because it should be similar to what they're going to start the regular season with. With Hyman and Dermott out, I took them out of the lineup just so that way it would be more of an opening night roster from 2014 versus opening night roster from 2019. Just to show you guys real quick on the defense, I did replace Dermott with Marincin because, like I said, Dermott is injured, and I built the exact lines the Leafs used defensively last night. And then pretty obvious in net, Frederik Andersen the starter, and the Leafs did take Michael Neuwirth off his PTO, so Michael Hutchinson is now the backup. Starting off the game here at Scotiabank Arena, the 2014 Maple Leafs are going to get the puck first and have the first scoring chance of the game with Bozak in across the line, centers it at the slot to JVR, and right off the bat, the 2014 Maple Leafs have the lead. Not what anybody would have expected. No one probably could have called that either, with JVR getting that quick goal to put the 2014 Leafs up on top right off the bat. And then off the second face-off of the game here, with the 2014 Maple Leafs winning it again, Robida goes up to Bozak, back to Phaneuf, who takes an easy shot and scores as well. So just like that, it's already 2-0 for the 2014 Toronto Maple Leafs, which is just a shocker to the 2019 Maple Leafs. Now for already the third face-off of the game, it's once again won by the 2014 Maple Leafs, who are going to go in across the 2019 Leafs line again, as Robida passes it over to Kessel, and he scores, and it's already 3-0 for the 2014 Toronto Maple Leafs. As you see the highlight here, it was an easy tip-in across crease, which goes in almost every time on this game, but still, the fact that the 2019 Maple Leafs have had absolutely no answer or nothing they've been able to do so far is crazy. Probably nobody would have expected the 2014 Toronto Maple Leafs to be doing so well against the stacked 2019 Maple Leafs, but so far they've just been shredding through them. And as we just stick to the highlights here, here was the 2020 Maple Leafs' first scoring chance of the game. Morgan Rielly's in, and a nice save made by James Reimer closing the door, as Morgan Rielly stares off into the crowd, probably not knowing what the heck is happening right now. And here's another scoring chance for the 2019 Maple Leafs as they come in across the zone, and Mikheyev with that chance, but Reimer again is shutting the door. This game seems to be a trend this game. He's playing outstanding, a brick wall back there. As the period winds down, a really good period for the 2014 Maple Leafs, something no one could have expected. Their stats were way better with the 9 shots to 4. Time on attack, they almost tripled. Passing percentage, they were up by like 20% compared to the 2014 Maple Leafs, and so far it's just not been looking good at all for the 2019 Toronto Maple Leafs. As the second period is about to start here, this is clear that this period has to be more dominant for the 2019 Maple Leafs if they want any chance to try to win this game. Moving about halfway through the second period now, in the corner, Kessel gets a scoring chance, and it goes right back across to him, and he buries one off the one-timer to make it 4-0 for those 2014 Toronto Maple Leafs, which is kind of insane when you think about how much less skill they have compared to the 2019 Maple Leafs. And that was it for Frederik Andersen there. He did end up getting pulled because he wasn't having a good enough game whatsoever. As the 2019 Maple Leafs come up the ice, a nice little spinning move by Kapanen, tic-tac-toe, and finally the 2019-2020 Toronto Maple Leafs get their first goal of the game and move within 3 goals with lots of time to go to try to push back in this one. Now, skipping ahead to the end of the second period, not a whole lot else happened other than the 1 goal for each team. That was the couple scoring chances they had, and they were both able to capitalize on them. as the 2014 Toronto Maple Leafs hold on to the 4-1 lead into the third. Right at the start of the third here, the 2019 Toronto Maple Leafs need to get going right off the bat to have any chance to win this game. A nice tic-tac-toe once again. This time it's Austin Matthews, and it's a 4-2 game early in the third, and now it's looking really good with plenty of time for the 2019 Toronto Maple Leafs to try to come back and win this one. Right after saying that, here's another chance from the 2019 Leafs. Couldn't bury it there. There was definitely an opening. And then just a couple minutes later, David Clarkson winds and buries one to give the 2014 Toronto Maple Leafs a 5-2 lead and almost shut the door on this game if Reimer can play as well as he has been. Now skipping ahead to the end of the game, because really nothing happened other than the 2014 Toronto Maple Leafs suffocating the 2019 Leafs into their own zone almost the entire rest of the game. To pull off the win, James Reimer, a brick wall in net, and the 2014 Toronto Maple Leafs somehow win over the 2019 Stanley Cup contending Maple Leafs in a convincing 5-2 game. Shots were 23-19 for the 2019 Leafs, so they definitely had the edge there. Time on attack, they also had a slight edge in, but overall it looks like the passing was what made the difference. The 2014 Maple Leafs gelled better together. And then jumping to look at the stats real quick, it was really those 3 quick goals in the first period that put this away for the 2019 Toronto Maple Leafs. But anyway, guys, as we look at the rest of the score sheet real quick, you can see who had all the penalties, who had all the goals. If you enjoyed, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out my other videos. There'll be more like this one. And anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Later.